This side of the van has something that I'm really proud that I came up with. When I was 14, I ended up in a wheelchair because I do have one hand on the gas and the brake at all times. I only have one hand left to steer. I can always have my accessible home with me. You can see I've got the surfboard up from the bed, got the bike underneath. Hi, my name is Lisa Franks. This is my 2021 Ford Transit. So this is my kitchen area, and I actually spent a few months in the van before any of the cabinetry was done. And that's just because I really wanted a good feel of how much space my wheelchair would actually take up and how much room I needed to turn around and the height of things I wanted. So I'm really happy with the layout that I ended up with, because the first one I had in my mind really was not going to be accessible at all. And so I'm glad I did my build out in 2 phases. Basically, I've got a pull-out stovetop here, and it's got an induction stove, 2-burner stove. The reason it's in the drawer is because I can then wheel under it and get really nice and close to the working area. And the same kind of goes with my sink, is I can actually fit right under here and get in nice and close to the sink, whereas if I didn't have the space under the sink, I'd be twisted at a side or reaching forward. And so those were 2 major accessibility components that I needed in the van. I have really large upper cabinets, and that's so they're lower and I can reach them. This one's just a standard cabinet. I've got little strings so that I can close them easily. So this cabinet actually has a pull-down shelf. It's recessed in there, but when I want to access things on the top, the whole shelf can come out, and I can reach all my canned goods up on the top. And then it's iron hydraulics and can just go back in again and out of the way, and I just close it up again with this string, and everything's nice and concealed. I didn't want lots of canned goods or dry goods out in the open. I like everything to be nice and clean and put away. I've got just a little isotherm fridge here. Originally, I was going to go with a chest or like a drawer style fridge that was going to pull out, and I realized that would just take up so much floor space, which I need for my wheelchair. So last minute decision, I found this fridge. It's really a good size. I can easily go a week with groceries. There's a tiny little freezer in here. It keeps things just frozen enough so I can just keep ice cream and it's still somewhat solid, and that comes in really handy on a hot day. I decided to go with a really large sink because it's nice to just be able to throw my dishes in there if I'm in a hurry and need to get somewhere, and I can drive and I don't have to worry about dishes being all over the countertop or stuff. It can hold pretty much a good meal's worth of dishes. Underneath the sink, I have a small gray water tank, my garbage, and actually a small dehumidifier. And I'll run that after if I'm surfing and I have my wetsuit in the van and it's drying, or my swimsuit and stuff, just so I'm not building up humidity. It's nice to make sure I'm not having any issues with that. So I do have butcher block that can go into the sink, so I do have quite a lot of countertop space. I very rarely pull this out, but it is nice if I'm setting a lot of things out on the countertop. Behind the countertop, I've just got a little windowsill that's got plants. I keep my bread and some fruit and my soaps and paper towel there. It's nice that I can still see where everything is, but it's still kind of kept away and it's not going to fall around. So my top drawer has cutlery and actually some basic personal items like my toothbrush and makeup and hairbrush, just because I do all of that stuff at the sink as well. And then right below the cutlery drawer, I've actually got a fake drawer. And when I pull this out, it's a chopping block. So that's where I do all of my meal prep. I can wheel right under it. It's the perfect height for me to chop and cut all my vegetables. It also doubles as a table, so that's where I would eat my meals, or I'd play a game of cards or something at night with friends if they'd be sitting on the bench next to it. And then the third drawer is just a drawer that has my dishes and glasses and just anything for meals. And the big drawer on the bottom contains all my pots and pans, my blender, basically all the big stuff that doesn't fit in the upper cabinets or in the smaller drawers. So in the kitchen too, every little detail mattered as far as me having enough space. So when it came down to selecting the drawer handles, I wanted something that was recessed. If it was a regular handle that was sticking out, it could easily get caught in my wheels and could make turning difficult. So as you can see, I don't have a ton of space in the hallway area, but having these drawer handles recessed really makes a big difference for that. So my van life story goes way back to growing up as a kid. Our family was very, very outdoorsy. My dad was a teacher, so summer holidays were spent in northern Saskatchewan on canoe, portage trips, and winter breaks were spent in the mountains skiing. And then when I was 14, I ended up in a wheelchair, and I had to really think I had to put that whole outdoorsy side away. And I just focused on sport because it was easy and it was safe, and I knew that it would be accessible. Eventually I had a very severe shoulder injury that ended my sports career, and I went through years of chronic pain. I was one of the very few that was able to get out of that chronic pain, and what was helping me in that transition out of chronic pain was to go back to things that I really enjoyed, and it reminded me of growing up and our outdoor family trips and how much nature can heal and how nurturing it is. And so I really was trying to add more and more of that into my life. So in 2017, I went on my very first car camping trip. I packed up my Honda Element, and I just, had no idea what I was doing. And I went on a little road trip through Western Canada. In 2020, I actually built my Honda Element into a living space with a platform bed, I had a cooler and a camping stove, and I ended up living for 4 months in that van in 2 big long road trips. And that was just a test to see if I really liked the nomadic lifestyle. And for me, it worked out really well because I never had to worry about having an accessible hotel or Airbnb to stay at. My home was with me, and it was accessible, and it had everything that I needed. I did order a van, and it came in the spring of 2021, and I knew that the lifestyle was for me because it gets me outdoors. And with accessibility issues, another person could go to a region and they could spend a week hiking or biking in that location. But for me, there might be only a half day or a day of accessible hiking or biking. So the ability to be very mobile and to be able to stay in one spot for that day or 2 days and then quickly move on to another spot that has more accessible activities for me was a real draw. So this side of the van has something that I'm really proud that I came up with. It's a cubbyhole storage, and what I really wanted was something that I could quickly grab things on the inside or the outside of the van because it takes so much time for me to get on the lift and then back into the van. So this is actually open on both sides, and it contains a lot of the stuff that I would need outside as well. So I've got jackets and hats, tools, books and things like that. So if I'm outside, I can just quickly grab it and I don't have to go back in the van. And this was a huge thing that came together. It just popped into my mind after I'd been in the van for a few months without the cabinetry, and it's worked out really, really well, and I'm really happy with the placement of it. It meant to have to shift my wheelchair lift over a little bit, but it really couldn't have been in a better position. And then next to this, I've got a bench. It contains a porta potty in it, and it doubles as a seat for if I'm working at this pull-out table, if I have friends over. And then it has another use. This is actually how I get into bed. So I would transfer onto this bench, and I'd push a button, and the lid of the bench actually rises up to the height of the bed. The bed has to be really high because I've actually got a mountain bike under it. So there's no way I can manually lift my body weight up to the bed. It's almost shoulder height on me. So it was really important that I had some means to get into bed. Progressive Automations made the actuator, and it's just for basically a standing desk, but I've repurposed it for this bench. And so far, it's been working really, really well. I know a few people have taken the idea and they've done it in their vans as well. So it's really neat to see when you can use something that's for another use and apply it to accessibility. So I do have some recirculating fans. That's just to keep it cool. I don't have air conditioning in here, but for the most part, I'm just chasing fair weather. I don't want to be anywhere that's too hot. I do have 2 max fans, one in the front, one in the back. I couldn't go with the standard 1 vent and 1 fan because I couldn't actually manually open a vent. So I have both of these max fans have remotes, and that's how I'm able to open and close them. Under the bed, I've got some more storage. I've got some Tupperware drawers. And on top of that, I've just got a gym bag. I do most of my showering at the gym, so I've just got a bag ready to go that I can just quickly grab whenever I'm in the city, and I don't have to go digging around for it. Okay, so up in the bed area, I've got 3 cabinets, and these contain all my clothes. Some have a little shelf, and I just roll up my t-shirts and stuff like that. I find that's way better than stacking my clothes. And then I actually get to cuddle with my surfboard at night. I went with a high roof thinking that I'd be able to attach it to the ceiling, but I realized that it was just too claustrophobic and I wanted to be able to sit upright while I was on my bed. So for 6 months out of the year, I'm down in California surfing, and so the surfboard's in here with me, and then 6 months out of the year it's not in here and I have a lot more room. It's a queen size bed. The whole bed size was basically based on my mountain bike, which is under the bed, so I had to go lengthwise to be able to fit it underneath. All my LED lights throughout the van are on remote, and so I keep 1 remote in the front in the living area and then 1 remote back here, and that means, you know, I don't have to get up and reach around to be able to shut the lights off. It's exactly where I need it all the time. I do have a little reading light up here because these LED lights can get pretty bright. My little reading light's a lot dimmer. So up here I do have these long windowsills that reach down, and I try to keep them clear, but I will actually put a laundry bag down here, and so my laundry will be up here, and then I can still close the windows. I ended up going with all windows in the van mainly because I wanted a lot of natural light. It definitely gives up some thermal comfort and some privacy. But I ended up making these window coverings. They're kind of an accordion style. I had to learn how to sew to be able to make these, but they're made with poster board that would make them stand upright. And they also have some insulation reflectix on the inside. And they're covered with actually thermal curtains. And I add a little bit of green paint on them just to match the bedspread and to give it a bit of color. But basically they've just got snaps here that snap right into the window, so they can be fully extended and block out all the light, give me full privacy, and then they just fold up and tuck into the corner of the window when I want all my light inside. So when I'm actually driving, I transfer out of my everyday wheelchair and the driver's seat will swivel. Then I'm in here and I drive just the standard automatic vehicle, and the only adaptation is that I have hand controls. So underneath the steering wheel here, I've got basically a bar with a handle, and when I push it in, that puts the brake on, and when I pull it, that is the gas. And it's really just a lever system, so it's actually got little levers that go right down to the pedals, and so it just reacts that way. I've also got this little knob that helps because I do have one hand on the gas and the brake at all times. I only have one hand left to steer. So this knob helps me do the steering, especially if I was doing a U-turn or something like that. I do have a divider curtain that separates the living area from the driving space, and I use that mainly at night just for privacy and to help contain some of the heat as well, or keep some of the hot air out when it's really warm as well. So I chose the Ford Transit because the price range of the Mercedes was much higher, and then it was down to the Transit or the ProMaster. But I wanted all-wheel drive because I am from Canada. I do have to go through winter to get down to California, which is where I spend most of my winter. So the all-wheel drive was a big sell for me, as well as I just heard that the Ford Transit handled a lot better on the road than the ProMaster. So because I do have a mobility issue, it does make van life a little bit harder. There are a lot of things that I had to think about to be able to set up my space so I can do things independently. And things are still sometimes more difficult, but 100% it's worth it to try to work around those things. Being in a van has brought me probably to the best place I've been in my life. And if anybody out there is thinking, you know, they have challenges that they need to overcome to do something like this, I would just say find a way, because it is so worth it, and you'll surprise yourself at how quickly you can solve those problems and how, you know, in just a few months' time, you'll adapt really easily, and those things that you thought were big challenges will seem like very little things in the end. So I have a wheelchair lift called a super arm, and it's a really simple lift. It just is basically an arm that comes out and attaches to these clips and lifts myself and the wheelchair right into the van. I think most people are familiar with a platform lift, so it'd be a big platform that would come down like this with the user on it, but I found a lot more advantages to this lift. A platform lift would need about 4 feet for the actual platform, and then room for a person to roll off that platform. So parking, I would need at least 5 or 6 feet between myself and another vehicle. And a platform lift would actually block this whole doorway. So with the super arm lift, I've only got this little column that takes up the doorway, and people can freely go in and out of the sliding door. This lift will actually put me down on uneven ground. It doesn't matter where I am. It could drop me into lake if I wanted to. But a platform lift is really finicky. It's got a safety mechanism that would require you to be on completely level ground before it would actually let you get off. So with all those things considered, it was really easy to choose the super arm lift. And an added bonus is that it's really simple to repair if there ever is an issue with it. It's a lot easier to access all the moving parts. And then while I was in the van without the cabinetry, I realized that my wheelchair needs a pretty big turning radius, and there wasn't enough flooring with the way that Ford has the steps. So there's actually, I added a bit of flooring here over the step, and it's on a hinge so that if somebody does need the step to get in, it can be flipped up, but most of the time it's flipped down, and that just gives me a lot more space to turn around as well as to get onto the wheelchair lift, which has come in really handy. And then if somebody needs even more, I've got this little step stool that we can put out here, because it is quite a high leap to get up to this raised platform, but I try to make it work for everybody. Another accessibility feature I added on the van was a power sliding door, and that just makes it easier for me to get in and out. Especially when I'm on the inside, it can be hard to reach the handle, so I've got buttons in the front and on my key remote that allows me to quickly open and close the door. So on the back of my van, I have a bicycle rack that actually has a basketball wheelchair on the back instead of a bicycle. I do keep my bike inside because it's very expensive and I don't want to risk that being stolen. But the basketball chair is a fraction of the price. So my basketball chair, I played with Team Canada for a number of years, so being able to hop into a sport chair if I want to play basketball or pickleball makes a big difference compared to this chair. So it's nice to have it. And it's just on a rack that can pull out, and I still have access to the back of my van, and I can get into the garage, which we'll take a look at shortly. All right, so this is the garage of my van. On the right side, I have a 32-gallon water tank, which will last me probably 4 weeks if I'm careful with it. I've got an outdoor shower here as well with a hot water heater on the door. I use that if I'm getting out of the ocean and from surfing and just want to rinse off. It comes in really handy. And I've got actually a hose that I can use to rinse off my mountain bike too if it's dirty and I want to clean it off before I get it into the van. My van is actually built around this bike, so I went with the extended version of the van, and that actually also dictated the size of the bed because it is about 6 feet long, and I wanted it to be able to just be contained in the garage and not intruding into the living space. The bed is actually fully adjustable for height. Each corner has an actuator, so the whole bed can rise up or down depending on what I have inside for equipment. This helps also when I'm packing things. I can just lift the bed up, and from the inside it can wheel right underneath and into the garage. On the left-hand side, I have my electrical system just in this box. So I have 200 amp hour lithium batteries. On the roof, I have 300 watts of solar, and I have a 2000 watt inverter. I do have a shore power on the driver's side that I can hook up to, but mainly I've been chasing sun, so the solar has been more than enough for my needs. I've got a lot of sporting equipment. You can see I've got the surfboard up from the bed, I've got the bike underneath, I've got the basketball wheelchair on the back, and then I just have this little hanging area for my bike helmet and my packs that I carry when I'm out biking. Underneath I have these things called access tracks, and these are custom made for me, and they're just basically plastic wooden pieces, and I can lay these out on the beach, and I've got several feet of them, and so it can help me get across the sand, or even when I'm out boondocking in the forest, I'll lay these out outside my sliding door, and it acts like kind of an accessible rug actually, but it's dual purpose for getting over gravel, sand, or just helping keep my wheels a little bit cleaner. I've just got this collapsible little tub. I use that after I get out of the ocean from surfing, or rinse off my wetsuit, or if my wetsuit is still dripping wet when it's in the van, I can just put that collapsible tub underneath it as it's hanging, and it can drip into the tub. I did make magnetic window coverings for the sliding door and the back window. And yeah, they just fold up really nicely if I just want to let some light in, but they block out all of the light if I want privacy and warmth. So basically I just use gravity to unload the bike. I can reach the brake. So I just use gravity and the brake to control as I unload the bike. But this is my mountain bike. It gets me all over on the trails and really just opens up the outdoors for me, which would otherwise be not accessible for my wheelchair. So because I'm usually traveling on my own, it's really important that I can do things independently. So filling my water tank, emptying my gray water, loading all my sports equipment, I have to figure out a way to do it all by myself. So with a mountain bike, it weighs about 100 pounds. It's quite heavy. So I've rigged up a system with 2x6s as a ramp, and then this electric winch that I've just got attached to the front of my bike. So this allows me to load the bike independently, and it just basically pulls itself up the ramps, and I just guide it as it goes up. But this way I don't have to do any of the heavy lifting. Basically the winch just does all the work for me. So if anybody was thinking about this tiny lifestyle, I would say give it a try. If you can, do some car camping. Like I lived in my Honda Element, and it now feels like luxury compared to my Honda Element being in a van. But if you could do some of those smaller trips just to see what things you prioritize, what things you can't live without, and just really see if the lifestyle is what you can tolerate, I think that would be my biggest advice, is just try it and you'll find out what works and what doesn't work for you. And if there are people with mobility issues, I would say that living in a van like this gives me so much freedom. I can always have my accessible home with me, and it can get me to other places that I didn't think were accessible. So I'm in the middle of a forest and I'm just enjoying the outdoors. And it's because of the van that I can do that. And I've been able to solve a lot of the accessibility problems just with some thinking and reaching out to others. I know the adaptive community is really close-knit. Even through things like Instagram, I've been able to connect with other people who live in a van who have mobility issues, and I've taken ideas from them and I've given some ideas to other people. So definitely reach out to everybody. I'm always free to answer questions or to even help try to adapt people to their situation. I'm a problem solver. I think it's my engineering brain. I like to try to help people figure out ways to do their life on wheels if that's what they want. All right, well, thanks for joining me on the tour today. If you want to follow along in the future, my Instagram handle is keepinitwheel306. No G in keeping it. Thanks for following along again, and hopefully see you out on the road. Cheers.